Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer in that order. Welcome to the good stuff, High Rollers Vintage Edition. Today we're going to look at the auction house Huggins&Scott. And I've never featured Huggins&Scott on the High Rollers before, but I'm a fan of theirs personally. I sell cards in their auctions regularly, and I bid on some things now and then. They're not affiliated with the channel in any way, but I do know the owner, Bill, and Brian is a good friend who works there, and I'm just a fan in general. They're not one of the biggest auction houses out there, a Goldin or a Heritage, but they're sort of in that next tier, and they have their share of High Roller sales. They run 3 auctions a year. The third one is running now, hasn't ended yet, so we're going to look at the first 2 so far in 2022 and count down the top 10 highest sports card sales. We'll do some honorable mentions at the end as well. Leading off at number 10, an ultra rare card, 1917 Collins McCarthy, number 82, Shoeless Joe Jackson. It's graded a PSA good 2, and you can see the card is pretty off center there, although other than the centering, not a whole lot to complain about regarding a 100-plus-year-old card. Some tipped corners, but nothing major. Front surface looks pretty clean, as does the back again, minus the centering issues. Sold for $15,250. All the prices you see in this video are the hammer price, so not including the buyer's premium. Like I said, ultra rare card. This card's only been graded 9 times in total by PSA. This copy here is a PSA Pop 2 with 4 copies graded higher. It's just the second ever known sale of a copy of a PSA 2, and the first one went for roughly the same price as this one about a year ago. Number 9, 1961 Fleer. Number 8, Wilt Chamberlain rookie. Graded a PSA near mint 7 from our Blazer division. Looks nicer than a 7 from here. A little bit off center, left to right would be the only thing I can see really on the front here. Everything else looks super sharp. Surface is essentially perfect. Corners are really sharp, as are the edges. Back looks pretty clean as well. I'd say that's a very strong looking 7, at least from the pictures here. Sold for $16,750. The sale was back in August and was slightly on the high side at the time. The average of the PSA 7s around that time was about 16 grand. So when you factor in the buyer's premium, it was actually, like I said, a bit on the high side, but not by much. It is a PSA Pop 237, and there are about 250 copies graded higher or so. Those include 3 PSA 10s, but none of those 10s have ever been put up for sale. Number 8, here's an interesting one. A 485 count lot of 1969 OPC hockey number 193 Gordie Howe cards. I don't know how somebody would come across 485 copies of this. Apparently they were all from vending, but which generally means they're an ultra high grade, but you can see there's some staining and some bowing along the cards throughout. I don't know exactly how the condition breaks down, but regardless, pretty amazing collection, something that you don't see very often, obviously. Sold for $16,750. That's something like $50 a card, right around there. Maybe a little less than that, $40 a card or so. Hard to say how this would pan out for, let's say, a reseller who's going to potentially break this up. I would guess they'll do well, but again, it kind of depends on the condition breakdown. Number 7, 1915 Cracker Jack. Number 30, Ty Cobb. Graded a PSA good 2. Cracker Jacks came out for 2 years, 1914 and 1915. The 1914s are actually much rarer, but no, the 1915s are plenty rare in their own right. 2, looks like staining is one of the big issues, centered off left to right, and it looks like a bit of a slant cut. You can see along the left border it gets wider towards the top than towards the bottom. So yeah, 2 seems about right. The back there has some staining. The Cracker Jacks almost always have staining, as they came in Cracker Jack boxes. Sold for $17,750. There's been one other sale of a PSA 2 since this one. It was about a month after this one. Went for roughly the same price, so nothing crazy going on here. This card is a PSA Pop 25, and there are roughly 100 copies graded higher. There have actually been given out 3 PSA Mint 9s. Pretty hard to believe, but none of those have ever been put up for sale. Number 6, 1951 Bowman, number 253, Mickey Mantle rookie, graded a PSA VGEX4, and look at that card. At first glance, that looks way better than a 4, 6, or 6. It looks more like a 6, something like that, maybe even a tad higher. You can see a little bit off center, top to bottom, as you look at the card. Maybe the tiniest bit off center, left to right, although not much. Looks like on his cap, there's sort of be some sort of print flaw with the card. I guess that would be the most notable issue there on the front. And then the back does have some light staining. It's fairly common on the 51 Bowmans, but it's pretty significant there towards the top. So PSA 4, probably is technically the right grade, but I would say this is a really high end, looking for eye appeal wise. Sold for $18,250. This sale is actually slightly high if you factor in the buyer's premium. The average of the sales right around the time of this sale was more like about 18,000. So again, the buyer's premium takes it sort of well above that. This card in this grade is a PSA Pop 373, and there are roughly 800 or so copies graded higher. There does exist one PSA 10. That card has not been put up for sale in a couple of decades at least. Number 5, a 1957 Topps Baseball complete set. 407 cards in the set, and every card is graded by PSA with an average grade of over 7. So a very, very high grade set from the 1950s. Lots of rookies in this year of note. Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson, you can see both of them. The Brooks Robinson's a 7, Frank Robinson is a 6. You also, of course, got Mantle in a 6, Mays in a 6, Clemente in a 7, Koufax in a 6, Ted Williams in a 6, Mantle Barra in a 6. Other rookies of note, Bobby Richardson's a 7, Rocky Colavito is an 8, and you can see all the other goodies included there. This sold for $23,000. My first thought was that seems pretty low. It seems like the breakup value would be quite a bit more than that, although I really couldn't calculate that without a more adequate research department. We all know how limited I am there. But yeah, very, very cool item here. Number 4, 1966 Topps USA Test Issue number 35, Bobby Orr rookie. Graded a PSA Mint 9 OC. The OC is a qualifier standing for off-center, and the way to read that is this card would be a Mint 9 if not for the centering. And yeah, you can see the top-bottom centering is significantly off, whereas the rest of the card is essentially, well, a Mint card. Back, same thing, looks razor sharp except for the top-bottom centering. Sold for $25,000. There was actually another 9 OC that sold a month later in a Goldin auction, went for just $14,000, but something strikes me as maybe that was some sort of fluky low sale, because that seems particularly low, but compared to that one, this sale is obviously quite high. The last PSA 7 sale, which would sort of be a comp for a 9 with a qualifier card, was all the way back in early 2021 and went for $33,000. So I guess you could use that, although obviously the market's changed significantly since then. The card is a PSA Pop 2, and so the card's been graded a 9 2 times and a 9 with a qualifier 2 other times, and the card has never been graded a 10. Number 3, 1957 Topps, number 77, Bill Russell rookie. Graded PSA EX plus 5.5, and just another card with really, really strong eye appeal for the grade. Centered basically perfectly all the way around. And the 1957 Topps basketball usually come with heavy surface issues, like a lot of white specks all over the card. I don't see much going on here. Surface looks really, really clean, both on the front and the back. Again, I would call this a PSA 5.5 with a very, very strong eye appeal. Sold for $27,000. This was in April. The sale is definitely on the high side, although the market's been dropping since then. There was a recent sale, or when I say recent, there was a sale in August of a PSA 5.5 that went for $21,000. And I guess that sort of lines up with the decline of the market a little bit over that time. It's a PSA Pop 15, and there are roughly 350 copies or so graded higher. The highest grade ever given out is a 9, and there are 3 of those. Number 2, a high rollers regular, 1952 Topps, number 311, Mickey Mantle. Graded a PSA good 2, and again, very strong eye appeal for 2. Centered extremely well. Left to right maybe perfectly. Top to bottom looks a tiny bit off, but not much. Lightly tipped corners, and you can't really see it in the pictures, but the card does have a crease, which is mentioned in the description, about a 5/8 inch crease from the upper middle edge, and goes up to barely touch his hat. Also apparently has multiple edge creases and bends which barely break the surface. But yeah, can't really see them in the photos here. And again, I would call this a pretty strong eye appeal for a PSA 2. Sold for $66,000. This was in April, and this is actually the all-time record sale of a PSA 2. In April, there have been 5 PSA 2 sales since this one, and the average of those 5 is $52,000. Again, market's sort of been declining a little bit since then. This card's a PSA Pop 209, and there are roughly 1,300 copies or so graded higher. Those include 3 PSA 10s, none of which have ever been put up for sale. And number 1, 1917 Collins McCarthy, number 147, Babe Ruth from the same set as that Shoeless Joe Jackson that finished at number 10 on the list. And another ultra rare card. Graded a PSA poor 1 and very strong eye appeal on the front at least for a 1. Slight slant cut. You can see the upper left border is a little wider than the lower left border, but not that significant. Certainly some tipped corners, but well above the 1 level as it appears on the front. The back does have some paper loss if you look along the right and on the top, and that's going to bring the technical grade down to a 1. Sold for $95,000. It's actually the second sale of a PSA 1 in 2022. The other was also through a Huggins&Scott auction. Went for significantly less, $77,000 with the buyer's premium, but that one had much lower eye appeal, which explains the discrepancy in price. This card, like I said, ultra rare, has only been graded 17 times in total by PSA. 6 of those receiving 1s and 2 receiving 1s with a qualifier, so not a lot of copies in existence nicer than this one. All right, let's check out some honorable mentions. We will start with pre-war baseball. How about an 80 count lot of 1915 Cracker Jack cards, all different, includes 9 Hall of Famers, including Connie Mack, Sam Crawford, Roger Bresnahan, and a few others. Looks like the breakdown condition-wise mainly good to VG with some higher as well, as much as VGEX or so, and it looks like no true beaters in there. $12,000 for the lot. Jackie Robinson rookie, 1948 Leaf, graded a PSA VGEX 4. Looks like a pretty strong 4, at least from here. $14,250. Another Jackie Robinson, this one 1952 Topps in the high number series, number 312, graded a PSA VG plus 3.5, $12,500. Look at this hoard, 1974 Topps baseball collection of 23,000 cards, including 387 wrappers loaded with stars and Hall of Famers. Just as an example, you got 34 Dave Parker rookies in there, 33 Thurman Munsons, who else we got? 16 Nolan Ryans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like it's standard, mainly like an X-Mint lot ranging from mainly EX to near mint or so. The lot went for $7,900. That would be a fun one to play with. 1980s baseball is in the building. Let's get wild. 1986 Topps traded Tiffany baseball sealed case. That's 6 complete sets of 1986 Topps traded Tiffany. Barry Bonds is the big card in there, but you also get Bo Jackson, Will Clark, Jose Canseco, and some other stars. Yeah, I mean, you get a PSA 10 Bonds, and you're probably doing well here at the price of $9,900. 1980s baseball is still in the building. You can continue being wild. This one's on my boy Cal Ripken. 1980 Charlotte O's Police Orange Border minor league pre-rookie, graded a PSA VGEX4. I actually saw this being displayed at the National and drooled a bit, but this one went for $12,500. 1985 Star Gatorade Slam Dunk Michael Jordan. The card is autographed, comes with a letter of authenticity from JSA. Michael Jordan has had exclusive autograph rights with Upper Deck for some, 30 years or so. So getting his autograph on any non-Upper Deck item is extremely difficult. $10,750. Huggins&Scott does quite a bit with memorabilia. Here's a 1923 or 1924 game-used bat used by Goose Goslin, who's a Hall of Famer. Again, used in 1923, 1924, somewhere in there. Comes with a letter of authenticity from the Goslin family, and it's graded a PSA 9. Went for $15,250. And more autographs. How about Babe Ruth on a ball? Not the nicest looking autograph, but what's super cool about this is that this is a game-used ball that he hit a home run with this ball. The 28th home run from the 1927 season. That's the season where he ended up with 60 home runs. This was the 28th of the 60, and he obviously signed it. Comes with a full letter of authenticity from JSA, $42,000. And one non-sports for all you comic book fans, 1963 Marvel Amazing Spider-Man comic number 1. It's graded a CGC apparent 8.5, and this comic went for $14,250. But that's it. Your top 10 this week featured 2 Mickey Mantle and 1 each of Babe Ruth, Bill Russell, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Bobby Orr, Wilt Chamberlain, Ty Cobb, Gordie Howe, and a 1957 Topps baseball complete set. Thank you, everyone, for watching. No regular rollers tomorrow. High rollers and regular rollers are both going to be on pause for a bit, as I'm going to be taking some time off here in December. But really appreciate everyone watching, and see you all again real soon. Thanks, everyone.